Welcome to Classical Ideas. This is Greg Soden. In March 2018, I interviewed the Rinzai Zen Roshi Meido Moore as he was opening up the brand new Korinji Zen Monastery in Wisconsin. We talked about the palpable excitement as Meido was waiting for his first new residence, finalizing the construction of the monastery, and celebrating the release of his book, The Rinzai Zen Way, out from Shambhala. So I put the episode out, and little did I know that the episode would find a listener who was a lifelong student of Buddhism, but was also looking for a teacher. He heard something special in my conversation with Meido, so much so that he sought him out. So my conversation today is with that exact listener who is now a guest on the show. And his name is Robert Schaefer. He is a fellow New Yorker from across the state. And he recently traveled to Korinji Monastery in Wisconsin to complete a Zen ceremony called Jukkai with Roshi Meido Moore. So in our conversation, we talk about Robert's lifelong Buddhist practice, his Jukkai ceremony that he just completed and why it was such an important milestone in his life. And we also talk about sort of like an hour-by-hour breakdown of what it's like to be on retreat and living a sort of monastic life at an American Zen monastery, which many of you can probably find. It's just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, and it's called Korinji, and you can find their website at korinji.org. So if you want to follow Robert, you can find his Facebook group called Returning to Silence, if you just type that into the Facebook search bar. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at classical_ideas or at facebook.com/classical ideas podcast. If you take a minute to rate this show on your podcast app, I would also hugely appreciate it. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation on Zen, Korinji Monastery, and Jukkai with Robert Schaefer. Robert Schaefer, welcome to Classical Ideas.
Thank you, Greg. I have a lot of respect for the effort you make with this podcast, and I'm honored to be on it.
Well, that is so nice to hear. Thank you so much. Can you just introduce yourself to the audience however you see fit?
My name is Robert Schaefer. I'm a Zen Buddhist, a father, a grandfather, a professional chef, a sculptor. I rescue as many huskies as my wife will tolerate. I own a company that manufactures pickles and fermented products in New York City called Divine Brine, and that's pretty much where I'm at.
What does Divine Brine mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
We take extraordinary efforts to create a product that is free of all kinds of pesticides, chemical additives, colors, artificial flavors. So it's, we try to keep it divine.
I love it. So off air earlier, you were telling me that you found Buddhism upwards of 5 decades ago.
Yes.
What is the sort of like condensed version of finding Buddhism, and what intrigued you and grabbed your attention once you found it?
Okay. So, as about 14 years old, I came from a very strict Roman Catholic family, and I was totally rejecting the whole blind faith, accept what they tell you kind of approach. I really wanted like a direct experience of spirituality, like not being told what to believe. And I wanted something much more organic and developed from within. So I started like doing yoga and meditation, and I came across Ram Dass's Remember Be Here Now. And it totally rerouted my life. It was one of those books, as you're going through the page by page, you're going, yes, yes, yes. And I was like 14, 15 at that time. And, I know that book has influenced tens of thousands of people. And he just passed away a few weeks ago. And but I stayed in contact with him for years. And in the back of the book, he had these suggestions, was books to hang out with. And there was like maybe 100 plus books. And I started buying every one of those books as a kid. And I was reading them or taking them out of the library and just immersing. And the Zen books were really grabbing me. So I'd be, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning as a kid, burning incense. And my parents were convinced that they had brought home the wrong kid from the hospital, So, and all this was reinforcing that. So there was this lecture, like an ecumenical council up in Fordham University about in the early 70s. And Edo Shimano Roshi was on the dais. And everybody was speaking about, all the speakers were speaking about the particular practice, whether it was Judaism or, yoga or whatever was up there. But when he was up there, he had such an incredible presence. There was a moment where he took out a handkerchief out from his robes, opened it up, blew his nose, refolded it, and it was like, this man is doing his practice right in front of me right now. And it was so profound. It was the most simplest thing you could imagine, blowing your nose, but it was done so incredibly mindfully, it was like a lightning bolt that hit me. So at 15, I was living in Queens, and he had a center in New York City on East 67th Street called Shobuji. It's still there. And I would tell my parents I was going to go play handball, and I'd jump on the subway, go to Manhattan, and sit zazen with this Japanese Zen master. And that's how it all started. And it was electrifying. And that was when he was just starting that center, and he was full of lightning bolts. He was really incredible.
So that's Edo Shimano Roshi, you said, right?
Right.
Okay, so what school or practice of Zen was he? Is he a Rinzai practitioner?
Yeah, he's Rinzai, yes.
Okay, so you found Rinzai like right away from the very beginning.
Right, yes.
Okay, cool. So, because I was going to ask you, like, if you had any specific reasons you landed on Rinzai, but did you try out any other kinds of Buddhist practice as well?
Yeah, I did. There was a period in my life where I spent some time with the New Kadampa tradition, and I spent 10 years, and that eventually became a teacher. I had a group that met in Babylon, like about 40 people, and I spent years doing that. But I decided that I really had to get back to my Zen roots. I started training in Long Island here with a gentleman called Rick Hart, also known as Kendo, and it was called the Clear Mountain Zen Center. Then I felt that really wasn't the right place for me. I moved on to the Zen Mountain Monastery up in Mount Tremper, New York, and I became the student of Conrad Ryushin Marshaj. He was the abbot at the time, and I asked him to be my teacher. And originally I went there to be Daido Roshi's student, but his health was failing, and then he died, so that was impossible. So
that's John Daido Moore, right?
Yes.
Okay. So have you so you dabbled in lots of different Buddhist practices and retreats over the years,
yes.
And so all of that history all takes place before you and I ever became aware of each other.
Yes.
And so I'm curious how you came to be aware of this show, because you and I have been corresponding now for a long time, at least a couple of years, it feels like.
Yes.
Do you remember when you first became aware of this?
I know that Meido's interview was that must have been a couple of years ago, and I think that's originally when I came in contact with you, and that's how I originally found Meido.
Oh, wow.
Through your podcast.
That is kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah. So
okay.
Around and around the circles we go.
It's really amazing. So you found this show, and that you're talking about Meido Moore, who is the abbot of American Rinzai Zen at Korinji in Wisconsin.
Yes.
And so he has a great book out, the Rinzai Zen Way from Shambhala. He's got another book on the way.
Yes, it's coming out October 12th. Another one's coming out, yeah.
Awesome. So what did that experience of hearing his conversation with me, like what did that inspire in you, who was already a lifelong practitioner of Buddhism? Like what did that like do in your mind that drew you to him?
I was very much interested. The practice that's done at Zen Mountain Monastery is a blend of Rinzai and Soto. And my leanings were more towards pure Rinzai. There's a lot there for me. And so when I listened to I got the book after hearing the podcast. It made a very deep impression on me. And I started contacting him. I had conversations. And I had been studying with my teacher for Jukkai precepts, to do the precepts with my teacher, but I was having reservations about my current teacher and the direction that the Sangha was going, and I was looking to make a change, but I wasn't sure if Meido was the person, and we just built a relationship that built up into like last weekend.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
So you're a critical player in this.
That's amazing. Does he know this? Does he know this connection between me and you and him?
I don't know, but I'm not sure. He does now.
Well, maybe he will now. Yeah. Hi, Meido. Okay, so so over those correspondences, like, what caused you to want to take that jump into Korinji? Like, why did you decide? Okay, this is really where I want to go with this.
There is, when there's a vibration that goes out from a teacher that is when he is really on the money and really a true practitioner and he's walking the walk. And when you meet his students are manifesting. And when you go to look for a teacher, a really great barometer is to see how his students or her students are behaving and manifesting. I find it, Meido students were focused, devoted, mindful, compassionate, and that spoke volumes to me. But Meido was so accommodating. So, how can I help? What can we do? And I love that. And he's very approachable, extremely knowledgeable, and he is really doing pure Rinzai up there, like I've never seen in any form by anyone in the United States. And I've been, wandering around for a while.
Did you ever do any retreats out at like Mount Baldy or Tassajara or any places like that on the West Coast?
Not West Coast, no. I have people that have. I know people that have, but I did not go out there.
Okay.
I did plenty at Zen Mountain Monastery and things like that and all around, but,
Cool. Which is awesome because Zen Mountain Monastery is actually right down the road from me. I live in Buffalo. You're in New York City, and they're kind of like sandwiched right in between us.
Yeah. Yep.
And a bunch of people in Buffalo Zen, they go over to Zen Mountain Monastery as well because that's what the lineage of the Buffalo Zen group is. They go over there all the time.
It's almost like a branch. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you just kind of alluded to a trip that you recently took to Wisconsin to attend a retreat at Korinji.
Right.
Just outside of Madison, Wisconsin.
Right. It's about a 40-minute drive north of Madison.
Okay, cool. So what was the purpose of the retreat that you went to? Why did you go to that one? Was it a special retreat? Why did you go this time?
I designed the retreat. I was originally, what I asked Meido was, I felt that to bring new students up there had to be more of a bridge, something that wasn't as intimidating, perhaps, as a session, which is like full on 7 days of silence and maybe 10 sitting sessions a day. And, it has, and that's very hard for a beginner brand new at it to break into it. So I discussed with him, how about we do like a 5-day, quote unquote, informal retreat. And he said, Robert, let's do it. It sounds great. Put it together. And I have a Facebook page called Returning to Silence. And we've got about 3,600 people that follow that. And I opened it up to them. I said, look, would anybody like to participate? This is what we're going to do. It's not going to be super intense. You're going to be able to ask questions and learn and do whatever. And I got a good response, and we went ahead and did it. So that was last week.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about the setting of Korinji, like what the building is like, what the grounds are like? Tell me a little bit about the physical place itself.
Well, you're deep into these rolling hills in Wisconsin, in farm country, and it's pretty remote. There's 2 main buildings. There's one that is like the residence and the eating, the kitchen and everything, the library and, assorted special rooms. And that's where the Roshi also lives. And then there's the Zendo, which is about, a couple hundred feet away down the hill. And it's a big hall that is just, all of it is brand new. So it's just sparkling, the place. And it's kept immaculately. And it's done with such good taste and balance with natural light and everything. It's really beautiful.
Are there like walking trails or anything like that around? Like, what is the environment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, we'll get into that more later. But I mean, yeah, there are plenty of roads and trails. One person that was with us she was from Milwaukee, and she just was having the best time, like when she have a break, just walking for miles and miles undisturbed. And there's plenty of that. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you said this was a 5-day retreat, right?
Right.
How many other people besides you from Returning to Silence went? Like, how many people who don't live there actually went on this retreat?
I'd say probably about 9 or so. 8, 9 people participated. It varied day by day, but yeah, it was about 9 people. Yeah.
Where did everybody stay? Because I think that I remember that Meido said there's only 6 live-in people who were there. So where did everybody stay while they were there?
There's one large room, and we all have sleeping bags, and it's all genders, and it's like we sleep in this room, just like in a regular monastery.
Did you sleep in the Zendo itself, or were you in different rooms?
No, it was one big room that we all sleep in. Yeah.
Oh, even the 6 live-in people.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I understand.
So there's
cool.
There's less living people right now, but yes, yeah. We all, the monastics, residents, and all the guests are all in one room, and, no gender division.
There we go. So let's talk about the observed and practiced form of the retreat. So you arrive at the monastery, arrive in street clothes.
Right.
Like, then what happens? Do you change? Like, what? How does it work whenever you arrive at a monastery for a retreat?
Well, first of all, Meido was gracious enough to come down. He actually drove down and picked us, 3 of us that flew in from New York. So we had 40 minutes of, some really interesting conversation on the way up. And, people had questions and people just getting to know each other. And when you get up to the monastery, we had lunch together, and we kind of, Meido said, look, what do you want this retreat to be? What do you want to learn about? And I had some very specific requests. One was that he has some Rinzai breathing techniques that he outlines in his book that really require, I feel, the teacher spending direct time with the student. It's like, you could read about it to a certain extent, but you really don't want to create bad habits. You don't really want to create, something that he's going to have to fix later on. So I really wanted him teaching me directly how to do it. So he says, oh, that's great. We'll devote an hour each day to that. And so everybody was on board with that. And other people had questions on how to sit or how to do this and that. And they were so extremely gracious, and just anything we wanted to do, he said, we will form this the way you want it to be, but there is monastery life, and it kind of felt, we fell into that as well. So by dinner time that evening, all the kind of maybe the questions and everything subsided. We went down. Some of us have robes from years of practice. Others just would put on, you don't put anything on that has a logo on it or Godzilla or whatever on it, but you would put on, something subtle, dark-colored clothing that wouldn't distract other people, comfortable and warm because it was 0 degrees outside. It was the middle of winter in Wisconsin, So you really had to have a couple of extra layers under there because the Zendo is generally, especially in the mornings, is like about 50 degrees. So it's like, woo.
So this is like a really customized experience for you guys.
Yes.
Like, are you going to do more customized experiences like this in the future, do you think? Because this sounds like it's like out of the ordinary.
We have a plan to do more. He wants to do 2 or 3 a year. He really loved the way the whole thing came together. And I have more people that are interested in going that are part of returning to silence that couldn't do it the first time but want to do it the next. So I think it's going to be something that is going to grow, hopefully. Yeah.
Cool. Did you all that came in from New York City, did you come with similar goals, or was this sort of like a tailor-made experience for each individual person?
It was really tailor-made for each person, which was the beauty of it, because one person had 0 Zen exposure walking into this. 0, like no reference whatsoever, but just kind of trusted in me. And she was a teacher that teaches mindfulness in the New York City school system and really wanted hands-on, non-intellectual approach. So she just threw herself into this and she was embraced, and it was tremendous. Another person was an abbot of a monastery that's here. So it was like from A to Z as far as experience, and everybody was accommodated beautifully.
What I want to know is, for that teacher who had never done Zen before, how she felt about the whole process. Like, what were like some of the major struggles that you saw or talked about her as she was going through this experience for the first time?
Well, it's a little, it's intimidating. You're sitting in silence, perfectly still for 30-minute periods. You're being silent for extended periods during the day. You're doing everything from trying to eat oatmeal with chopsticks. There's all kinds of it can be very disorienting. There's bowing, there's this very rapid fire chanting that is in like a Sino-Japanese Sanskrit blend that makes absolutely no sense to you, and you can't possibly keep up. So there's like me having ceremonies and all kinds of things happening. So there's a lot. It's a big, heavy hit. So even though we call it an informal retreat, somebody that has like 0 experience still was incorporated, but it was definitely challenging for that person. Yeah.
Oh man, that's so amazing. So, okay, so what I want to know is like some of the details of how the actual Zen retreat practice starts. So, like, what happens like right when you wake up? Like, take me through like a step-by-step, process of like the first few hours of being awake on like the first like real day of the retreat.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So at 5 a.m., the senior monastic yells, "Kaijo!" And everybody wakes up. She turns on the lights. You have to jump out of your sleeping bag immediately. You stand at the edge of your sleeping bag. You bow in gasho. Then everybody runs to like the bathroom to take care of whatever. You get into your robes, and the robes are quite complicated. It's like an Aido outfit, that's made for swordplay, and it's really layers and ties and all kinds of stuff. You got to get that done in 20 minutes, plus the bathroom, plus, all this stuff. And you're also putting extra layers underneath because you're going to be sitting still in a cold Zendo. So you got to get that together. So at 5:20, you have to run down the path down to the Zendo in the snow. The wood burning stove's not on yet. The electric heaters are keeping it about 50 degrees, and then you sit in your assigned seat. And however you're going to sit, you can use pillows or however you want to sit. But there's a very strict posture and a way to hold your hands, and you are not to move for 30 minutes. Then some bells ring or clacking goes with the wood, and then we do 10 minutes of kinhin, which is like a walking meditation in a circle, and it's usually at a pretty rapid pace there. And then 30 minutes, we sit down again, 30 more minutes of sitting. And, the person in charge in the Zendo is called a Jikijutsu, and she will go around and correct people, like you're not holding your hands right, but very quietly and very compassionately, and just making adjustments, helping people. Maybe your head's bent a little bit, or your back is not straight, or whatever, Then slowly dawn is showing up through the Zendo. You start to see light, and then about 6:30, the Jiki announces Dokusan, and that is the private meeting with the teacher. So everybody makes a beeline out of the Zendo, runs up the hill, runs into the monastery, runs up to the second floor, and we all wait in line behind a gong. And there's a room that the teacher's in, a private room, and he rings a bell. You respond by hitting the gong twice, and you move energetically into the space. You do a bow, then you do another bow, and then you're one-to-one with the teacher, and it can be all kinds of things can happen then. If you're just starting, it can be very cordial, kind of, how's it going? How are you feeling? What are problems? What are you dealing with? How can we, that kind of thing. If you're more advanced and you've been working with a teacher for a while, it can be pretty animated and loud and confrontational and fun. There's a lot of, it's very intense. If you're doing koan study, especially in Rinzai, it's very animated at times, and you have to become the koan. So it's very. It depends on the level that but either way, the Roshi is very compassionate either way.
So how long was the Dokusan process that you all went through? Because you were all in a line, and I assume everybody went through?
Yeah, everybody goes through it every day.
Okay, so how long is that process from start to finish for the Dokusan?
Oh, maybe, depending on how many people at a day, anywhere 20 minutes to half an hour.
Okay, so it's like right after one after the other.
Yes, sometimes, you go in, you give him your answer, and he says, he just rings his bell, and you're done. You're rejected. So sometimes they're fast. Sometimes, it could take quite a while in there. Somebody could take quite a while. Then the next thing is we have like maybe a 10-minute break of just standing still. And then we do choka, which is this morning ceremony, which is chanting. And it's about a half an hour's worth of chanting all these Sino-Japanese Buddhist chants, like the Heart Sutra, things like that. Then the next thing is we have at 7:45, then we have shukaza, which is like a morning meal, but it's done in oryoki style. So it's very much formal. It's silent. There's a whole. It's an orchestra. It's almost like a ballet. It's like orchestration of unfolding the bowls and your utensils in a sequence, and things are being presented to you to eat. There's signals to signal whether you want more or less or no more, and prayers are being said while you're setting up all this stuff. So it can be a little bit of an overload. And meanwhile, you're getting oatmeal. And you're trying to eat it with chopsticks, which is challenging. And then what you're doing is you get a couple of slices of daikon radish, and that's used you eat one of the radishes, but the other one you use as a cleaning utensil to clean the bowls when they pour some tea in your bowls, and that's how you clean your bowls. So then when that's done, and it's all the whole monastery is pretty much lacto-ovo vegetarian throughout the whole thing, you know. So then at 8:30, we change, you know, we get into like work clothes, and you start doing what's called samu, which is work practice. So you spend about an hour or so, and you start doing tasks that need to be done to maintain the monastery, replenishing firewood, kitchen duty, vacuuming, sweeping, shoveling snow. It all depends on the season. It could be gardening, you know, it could be all kinds of things. But
So what time of day are we at now whenever you start getting into the work practices?
8:30, 9:30.
Oh, so it's early still.
We're still way early. A lot has happened already.
That's unbelievable. It's so efficient.
Oh, it is totally efficient. At about 10 o'clock, we kind of come together, and we had an hour of free time here where somebody could read, do yoga, go for a walk, do personal practice like Zhenjiang or yoga or whatever, and even take a nap, whatever you needed to do. And then at 11 o'clock, we'd have an informal midday meal, which would be like a soup, some rice and a salad. After, we'd have a little conversation just to see where everybody was at. At 1, every day we would have lessons by the Roshi, where he would take us to the Zendo and actually teach us one-on-one, you know, how to do these Rinzai breathing methods or whatever. That was incredible. It was a missing piece that I've never been taught in any other Rinzai practice for my whole life. And he brought things and he took them to such a level, you know, he said, well, once you do this, then you can do this, and then you can do this. And he kept showing you ways that as you advance, you could take it further. So it wasn't just one and you're done. You know, you could see after you left here, you know, you would be able to still take it further and further. So it was great. And I wanted direct knowledge from him on that. People would go for hikes. One day after the teaching, he took us all in the car, and we went for a hike in a beautiful glen, and we saw frozen waterfalls and just had a real nature immersion experience. One day it was my birthday up there, and we celebrated my birthday, and we had some brownies, and we just had a good time. You know, so there was all kinds of stuff that went on. You know.
Earlier today, you said that you're a dog person. I love following your dog posts on Facebook, by the way. Did you get to meet the monastery dog that recently had knee surgery?
Yes, Phelan. He is totally recovered right now. In fact, this week he's allowed out again, and he is fully functional, and he looks like like nothing had happened. He's full of energy. He's 11 years old, but he's just doing tremendously well. And I mean, thanks to all the people that, you know, help Meido with getting him better. And he is just this great presence in the monastery.
Nice.
And Meido and him are just like so incredibly close, you know.
So, specifically, you were doing some work practices, right? So what physical labor were you mostly doing while you were there?
I was in charge of maintaining the zendo, so it was like sweeping the outside, vacuuming inside, taking care of, I mean, it gets into minute detail of removing the ashes out of the incense holders, and everything has got to be in a very precise, exacting manner. So what I would do is I would take pictures of exactly how everything would be, and so that I could put back everything exactly the way it should be. Because if not, when the teacher comes up to the altar, he immediately starts arranging things. You know that you screwed up. So you got to be like really on your game, you know.
So what is the purpose of the work? Because I know that's very much part of the practice as well. So what is the importance of all of those roles, like while you are in your practice mode?
Well, you are, you know, I don't know if you've heard the term, carrying water, chopping wood. It's really you're really looking to embody your practice it's not sitting. It's everything. It's 24/7. It's my sleep. I do my work on my koans in my sleep. So there's no off switch. So you are doing this practice with the mindfulness. Shoko, the Jikki and the senior monastic there, would show me something, and she says, "Look, what we're doing here will reveal exactly where you are right now." And really, it's very, especially things that were painstakingly tedious, is very revealing as far as like the attention that you are in this moment. If I'm just gonna bang through this, no, it doesn't go that way. You really have to be present and embody. It's moving zazen.
Yeah. So what is the evening or like the dinner time, like through the end of the day? What is that section of time like on these retreats?
Yeah, about 4:45 we have dinner. It's informal, same kind of thing. And then we wash up a bit. At 7:00 we do 2 or 3 more of the 30-minute sessions with the kinhin between. One night, the Roshi, as another birthday present, did a Shugendo Vajrayana ceremony in the Zendo. It's like a 40-minute ceremony that he did with lighting fires, and it was just incredible. And we all were able to participate and be part of that. He had us all write wishes on pieces of wood, and that was entered into the fire in the ceremony, and it was a very powerful experience. So that's kind of thing that happens some evenings. Most of us are in bed like 9, 10 o'clock. Some people were exhausted, especially after the first day or so, because just adjusting to the schedule and time change or whatever. But 9, 10 o'clock, because you're getting up at 5 o'clock. But
so it's a little bit, you get a little more sleep, it sounds like, than in some other nations in the world with Zen practice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like if you go to a regular, monastery and they're doing like session, you're getting 4 hours of sleep,
Yeah, grueling.
Especially, if you're doing Rohatsu, which is at the end of the year, you might not even get any sleep. So at the end of that 7-day section. So, so this was that. Well, but that's why I said it was, informal in that it wasn't piled on to people that were totally new. You don't want to like blow them up,
I really like that because it makes it accessible and open for people who may want to deepen their practice in the future instead of scaring them away right off the bat.
I think that's so important. Like, to let them become intimate with pieces and let them ask questions and understand instead of just going through some mysterious thing in silence for days and really not knowing what's happening. Here people were able to say, look, we did this. What does this mean? And they were able to interact with the Roshi, and Roshi was, every question was asked, and it was perfect because people really could then put their arms around it and understand it,
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, the other day I saw a post that you made on Facebook, and it was a ceremonial post where you were in the middle of it, and it was a ceremony called Jukkai.
Yes.
And on your Facebook, you wrote a status that said, "There are not sufficient words in my vocabulary to describe last night's events to you."
Yes.
However, since I am interviewing you, I want you to try.
Yes.
What is the purpose of Jukkai in Zen?
Correct.
Why did you do it? Tell us about this experience and why it matters so much.
Okay. Well, there's a lot here, but I'll try to put it together as best as I can. Jukkai is made up of Ju, which is receiving, granting, and Kai, which is precepts. So you're on a deeper level, it's like opening a space within the core of your being to what is like natural and true. And Kai is not really just the precepts are just not rules like commandments that keep you on the path, but more as like posts that kind of point you in the direction of acting in accordance with being benefit to other beings. So it's really a very deep commitment to living your life according to Buddhist precepts. You're making it for the rest of your existence. The first part of it is you take refuge in the three jewels, which are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And the second part is where you, as a lay person, you do 5 lay precepts. And it's like an affirmation not to kill, not stealing, not misusing sexuality, not lying, and not clouding the mind with drugs or alcohol or things like that. It's, different lineages have different approaches to this. Some will give you some beads to put around your arm as a symbol of this. Some lineages have you sew a rakusu, which is like, it looks like a bib, and you hand sew it during your precept education. It's months. Usually a teacher, in my tradition that I was in, a teacher basically tortured me for a year, telling me not to do it and telling me all the reasons not to do it, so that you really fight your way through it. And some lineages also ask you to transpose the entire lineage from Shakyamuni to current, literally writing out every name for 2,500 years. There is usually extensive training and studying over the course of let's say, a year or two that you prepare for this. But it all depends on the lineage that you're in. Meido's attitude is, if you ask for Jukkai and you're ready, you're going to get it. But it's a serious commitment. And I have to tell you, I originally went to Rick Hart for Jukkai, and I sold my rakusu. This is why I said it's hard to put this together in words. And then he passed away. I went to ZMM to go to Dado, and he passed away. I went to Ryushin, and Ryushin was the abbot at the time, and you have to go through this whole extensive 8-gate, there's all kinds of gates to become a formal student there. And I went through, it took a year to go through all that, and then he left the monastery then, so I wasn't able to do Jukkai then. And then I reconnected with him and did all the Jukkai training and realized that when I met Meido that was the Sangha and everything. So it's been like a course of 20 years of making this effort to try to make this happen that finally came to fruition. And it was extremely emotional. It was very powerful. It was very significant to me. It's, it's essentially you're already living the precepts by the time you take the precepts. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You're at that point in your practice where it's really not, oh, I'm going to, work towards this. It's really, you've really kind of incorporated at that point. And this is really just a confirmation of your practice.
So what is the ceremony like? What is Meido doing while you are doing this ceremony?
He is, he comes in initially to the group of people that are there, and he explains the significance and the solemnity of the situation. I'm waiting outside. He puts some incense on the burner. He sits down. I come in. I do 3 bows. I put some incense on the burner. I come in front of him. I do 3 bows again. And then he asks me to commit to these precepts. There's language that goes along with it. He does some prayers. And I do some more bows. I make a little speech of how I feel about the whole thing. And then everybody who was extremely, extremely supportive, and I had some very close friends there. It was It was just wonderful. I just cannot, like I said, it's very hard for me to put into words. I have a lot of levels of significance for me.
So, do you see yourself traveling to Korinji a couple times a year? Like, what is the your future practice with this location that you have bonded with so intensely?
Well, Meido has been very generous with his time, and I am constantly in contact with him in Messenger and in Facebook related worlds. Um, I plan on being there as often as I can. I plan on maybe moving on from my business and retiring soon. That will give me more time available for that. He also has family here, and he does classes in Connecticut at times where I can reconnect with him easily there and have physical meetings with him. So there's ways, if you want to make something happen, you make it happen.
Well, I know that he has connections to New Jersey as well.
Yeah, well, he has family there.
Yeah, cool. So what comes after the Jukkai ceremony? Like, what did you do after that at the retreat? Was that on the final day?
That was the final day, final night.
Okay, cool. So, now that you've done this coming to fruition of this 20-year process where you've gone from teacher to teacher, center to center,
right?
What are some of your future goals in Zen practice?
Well, I love that you said that because the name that I was given is Mutoku. You get a name, you get a Dharma name.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so my name is Mutoku, and that's no gaining.
Excellent.
So you're really not looking at attainment, and it's a very powerful name for me. And essentially, you strive to really serve the community, this new Sangha community, and serve the teacher as best as you can. But you really have to keep your practice consistent and strong. I sit between an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. I do liturgy in my private practice. There's a lot of chanting and different things that take place, and you really have to live your life according to these precepts, very much seriously. So I don't have any, Buddhist career goals. It's kind of antithetical to what I'm trying to do here, but it's a lot of work to be steady on your practice, not waver up and forget about it one day. It's like to be on it, steady, and it takes a lot to do that. And I've just looked to keep that going. I have studies. I do Cohen study with him, which is a very, a powerful means of working on yourself. And that's very much part of what I do.
Well, and you just said koans, and I kind of wanted to talk about our mutual friend Corey. So I did a koan episode with Corey, and we had a lot of fun talking about koans. But how do you see your koan practice as being an essential part of your actual practice?
Okay, well, teachers have a way of taking your temperature. And, some koans you'll say, I got this, boom, I've got it. Then others, you'll get stuck on, sometimes for years, sometimes for months, sometimes for days. It doesn't really matter. But what you find interesting is after you do, let's say, 30, 40, 50, 100 of them, you start to see patterns emerging. You start to see that I always get stuck with this particular type of koan. Like there's something in me that is not, there's a lesson to be learned here. Like here's an area I keep running into that is like this, maybe some blockage, something that I have to work on. And if you're observant and you really look into yourself, it could be very helpful. You really have an opportunity then to, this is like valuable information, so I use my koan practice like that. But it's to me, it's, I do my koans while I'm in the kitchen, while I'm driving my car, and sleeping. I find myself at nighttime dreaming and sleeping with them.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's a total all-in commitment with me. So, it kind of, you become the koan.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like I tell you, at the monastery, there was a moment when the night before my birthday, I had been struggling with this koan for a month, and I'm really into it and involved in it. And when I went to Meido with it, I gave him an answer, and it wasn't the answer that he wanted. And I went back, and that night, I was working on it all night, and there was one point where I had this rush of like a hot energy from the tips of my toes up right through my body, like this vibrational heat that just swapped through my body. And the next morning I had the answer to the koan, and it was right in front of me. And I went in and I passed the koan, and it's not an intellectual process. It's very experiential, it's not engaging the discriminating mind. So it's very, very challenging. You can't Google the answer.
Mm. So, I know that you're also a super voracious reader. We've shared book suggestions in Messenger throughout the last, several months or whatever.
Yes.
What are some things that people who may be listening to this, who might be, exploring Zen or interested in different ideas across different traditions, what might you suggest people read to help them gain a foothold and a little bit of knowledge into what you're doing with your life?
Oh, there's some wonderful books that are out that to help beginners. Meido's book is an excellent, excellent beginning book.
I agree.
I think it really, first of all, it lays out so clearly the approach and the discipline that's needed, and gives wonderful suggestions and illustrations on just how to do virtually everything with it. If you were to pick up that book, if I had that book, I'd be a different person, 40 years ago. When I started, there weren't books like there are now. But Meido's book is incredible. And the next one, I think, will even be more along those lines of being able to take it further. I believe it's called
the Rinzai Zen way.
Well, that's the
first one.
The first one, yeah. The next one's called Hidden Zen: Practices for Sudden Awakening and Embodied Realization.
Oh wow!
So if you had those two books, I think you'd be really set on a good path. There are many other books. There's another book out recently by Bonnie Miotai Trace called Wake Up. That's a brand new publication, and she was one of the original teachers at Zen Mountain Monastery. That's also a very good book right now. In fact, my wife's actually reading, which is, very encouraging. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Robert, do you want to say again where people can find you online? I know you have a very prominent Facebook group that you may encourage people to join. So where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah. Returning to Silence is the name of the Facebook page. We have discussions on Zen topics. People that need help or have interest in things participate. And I could definitely point them to Korinji's site, which is absolutely excellent, and also Korinji's page. And also there's a Rinzai Zen discussion group that Meido oversees, which is really excellent for getting many, many Rinzai viewpoints on Zen practice. I found that it's a excellently administrated page, and the tone and the maturity is there.
And I know that Korinji's website, I think, is just korinji.org. And I know that they also have a Patreon page where they do videos and things, right?
Right. He teaches techniques. If you become a member there, he has all these videos that he's archived over the last couple of years of breathing techniques, how to hold a prayer book, how to sit properly, just incredible. It's a growing volume of information that is becoming a great resource.
Yeah, because I feel like my favorite thing about his book, The Rinzai Zen Way, is that there's so many practical things in the book that anybody can understand, and he's got so many images. So I almost feel like with the Patreon and the videos, he's taking the book and bringing it to actual life.
Exactly. That's exactly what he's doing.
It's fantastic.
Yep.
Well, Robert, I am super grateful to you for spending an hour with me on a Friday night. I know that you have a big weekend ahead of you, going to markets to to work, and I'm just thrilled that we finally got to do this. I know we've been talking about it for a long time, so I appreciate your patience with me as I get through the massive list of my to-do list for my guests that I want to have in the future. So I'm super glad that you've found this show useful. I'm super glad that it made some kind of impact in your life. Like, you have no idea how amazing that is for me to hear. And I am really glad that you could be a part of this project as well.
Well, it's my honor.
It's been like 110 episodes ago that I had Meido, so I've been making some ground up on this show. So I think you'll be. I'm really glad that you can have him and Corey Hess, our mutual friend, to all share the same roster of guests. So it's awesome. So I'm super grateful, Robert, and thanks for coming on Classical Ideas. It's been a real pleasure.
Same here, Greg. Thank you so much.
Classical Ideas is produced by me, Greg Soden. Music on Classical Ideas is composed and performed by Derek Strybig. You can find his music at www.wearewarmmusic.com. If you like this show, please rate it on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can email me at classicalideas@outlook.com. or find me on Patreon at patreon.com/classicalideaspodcast. Thanks so much for listening.